We are going to share 4 very simple, easy to implement tips that will likely completely change how you use voicemail messages. And then I will show you 4 different voicemail messages that are built off of these tips. And the first tip is more of a mindset change, and that is to assume that the prospect who you're leaving a voicemail message for, assume that there is a low probability of them returning your call regardless of what you say. And this might sound a bit of a negative mindset and thinking in a very pessimistic way, but I base this assumption on 6 factors. The prospects that you're leaving voicemail messages for, they are extremely busy. And there's also a very good chance that if you mention the product or service you sell, there's a good chance that the prospect is not interested in what you sell. If you're calling at a decision maker level, such as a manager or an executive in an organization or a business owner, that person likely has a decent amount of ego. And if you leave a voicemail message as a cold calling salesperson, there's a good chance that that person might just think it's below them to pick up the phone and call you back. They might not call you back because they know that you're a salesperson and you're probably going to call them back again on another day. Or the prospect might hear your voicemail message and actually intend to call you back but forgets to. And maybe one of the main reasons why prospects don't call back is that they get so many voicemail messages that they might not even listen to your voicemail at all or in its entirety. And by operating with this assumption, this can drastically change both our mindset and our approach, because what we normally do is we normally start with trying to think about what we can say in our voicemail message that will get the prospect to call us back. Then we call the prospect and leave our perfectly crafted voicemail message. And then because we left our voicemail message and we asked the prospect to call us back, we need to wait and give them time to call us back. And then after a period of time and leaving a bunch of different voicemail messages, we start to realize that not many of these prospects are calling us back. And one thing that can do is that can create a bit of self-doubt. You can feel like you're wasting your time. You can feel like you're not doing a good job. You can feel like there are not prospects out there that need what you sell. And when you have more clarity that you're not doing anything wrong, it's just normal that prospects don't call salespeople back, you can skip all of this and skip all of the waiting and wondering if prospects are going to call you back. Another thing this assumption and change in mindset can help with is that it can prevent you from prematurely moving on from prospects that you might label as not interested. In a lot of cases, you might call a prospect a handful of times and leave them maybe 2 voicemail messages and ask them to call you back, and they don't call you back, so then you think, well, I guess they don't need what I sell, so I'm not going to call that prospect anymore. And you move on. But in most of those cases, you might be moving on prematurely and labeling a prospect as not interested when that's not even the case. In most cases, you need to keep calling those prospects back and continue to pursue them. Now, you might hear all of that and think, does it even make sense to leave voicemail messages if prospects aren't going to call us back? And the answer is yes. But what we can do is we can modify our messages and our strategy and change our approach from one that leaves messages that try to get the prospect to call us back and change to an approach that educates the prospect. We can use voicemail messages as one way to communicate with our prospects, and we can leave messages that educate the prospect on who we are and why it would make sense for them to have a conversation with us at some point. And if we have a story to tell and we know that we are going to possibly call the prospect many times and leave multiple voicemail messages, what we can do is we can take the story that we want to tell and divide it up into smaller chapters and then share part of that story in each voicemail that we leave. And if we assume that the prospect is not going to call us back, we can modify our messages so that we do not ask the prospect to call us back. And this might sound like a minor detail, but this small change can have a big impact on the voicemail messages that you leave for 3 reasons. First of all, when you leave the typical salesperson voicemail message and you ask the prospect to call you back, when they don't call you back, you're creating a scenario where they are not complying with what you're asking them to do. And that puts you in a weaker position, especially when you then pick up the phone and call them back and perform the task that you asked them to do. Another thing is that when you ask the prospect to call you back, you're passing the ball over to them for them to take the next step. And that takes control out of your hands. But you can eliminate that by not asking the prospect to call you back. You maintain control and you can determine and decide when that next callback takes place. Another big reason that I don't like asking the prospect to call back is that that is actually assigning a task for the prospect. And if you're a salesperson and you're trying to earn the opportunity to talk with the prospect, you're the person that needs to be doing the work at this point. So if someone's going to be calling back again, it needs to be you. And when you ask the prospect to do that, in my opinion, I think that's a little bit rude. And the last tip is to simply send a voicemail follow-up email after every voicemail that you leave when you're doing cold outreach. And this is important for 3 reasons. First of all, if you leave a voicemail message and you tell part of your story, you can then send a follow-up email that tells the same story, and you can then use email as a way to reinforce the message you're trying to deliver. The other thing is that it's much easier for the prospect to extract and save your contact information from an email as opposed to listening to your audio in a voicemail message. And if you also send a voicemail follow-up email, you're creating a much easier way for them to reply to you. It's much easier for them to hit reply and type a few words in an email than it is for them to try to listen to your phone number, write your phone number down, and then call you back. So those are 4 very simple, easy to implement changes. Now what I'll do is I'll show you actual voicemail messages that incorporate all of those tips and suggestions. And to figure out what to say in these voicemail messages, we can actually use the building blocks that we created in an earlier video. And the value points building block allows us to create a voicemail message that shares the different ways that we could potentially help the prospect. Now, just to explain this voicemail message and show you how some of those tips we discussed are incorporated, at the core of this voicemail message is the value points. Then after we share the benefits, we do a soft sales takeaway. That's completely optional. If that doesn't fit with your selling style or if you don't like that, you could simply leave that out. And then instead of asking the prospect to call us back, this is where we tell the prospect we're going to call them again. And we're going to call them next week. And this does a few very powerful things. We're not asking them to call us back, so we maintain control. We're not giving them that additional task to do. And we also let them know that we're going to be calling them back and we're going to be persistent in our attempt to connect with them. And by us letting them know that we're going to continue to reach out to them, that might motivate the prospect to reply to our voicemail follow-up email because they know that we're going to continue to reach out to them. And then I recommend you share your contact information twice. Now we can create a very similar voicemail message using your pain points. And then the third voicemail message shares an example of a customer that we've helped. And then the fourth voicemail message here is more of a voicemail message about the product or service that we sell. And this is actually closer to what the product selling salesperson will leave on their first voicemail message. We work our way up to these details and save these for one of the later voicemail messages. And one of our core tips was to send a voicemail follow-up email directly after you leave your voicemail message. And I'm going to show you 4 voicemail follow-up email templates you can use that actually pair with those voicemail messages that I just shared with you. And here's a voicemail follow-up email that shares your value points. Here's a pain points follow-up email. Here is a customer example voicemail follow-up email. And here's a product voicemail follow-up email. And that is pretty much it for this module. In the next training module, we will talk about how to put together a call cadence that improves our ability to reach out to and connect with our target prospects. If you have questions or you want more information, the best place to go is salesscripter.com. Thanks for being here. Hope this was helpful, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.